Hi, friends. This is the episode I didn't want to record. It's a story I didn't want to share, but it has been on my heart and mind, and I can't escape it. And as someone that ultimately leans into that creative pool, this is my story of how Me Too has affected me within our choir community. Welcome to The Choir Baton, a podcast designed to engage with people and stories, ideas, and inspirations stemming from choir. No other art form, no sport, no hobby, no business requires a group of people to execute a communal goal with just their voices. Join me, your host, Beth Philemon, as I interview guests who are singers, teacher conductors, instrumentalists, and community members. Together, we'll ask questions, seek understanding, and share insight from our experiences in life and in choir. Hi, Choir Baton. It is your host, Beth Philemon, and to be perfectly honest, I kind of did not want to record this episode / have put it off / decided I would record it and then thought, well, I want to do an every other solo episode, interview episode, and I have several interviewed episodes in the bag that I could easily pull out. But for the last week or so, this topic, and even considering talking about it on the podcast, has been on my heart in an unexplainable way. So much so that I have tried to avoid it, ignore it, all the things. But I can't not ignore this desire, desire is even kind of the wrong word, but this pull that I feel like I have to share this story because someone needs to hear it. So here we are. It is International Women's Month. It is Women's Month, March, and I have a lot of different feelings and emotions about what that means and all the things, but I can't help but think about women in the place of choral music. But more than that, a couple weeks ago was the sentencing of the Weinstein case, and the story that I'm about to share kind of coincides with what it is to be a woman in choral music. I could talk more on this, but for the sake of time and just quite honestly not ready to really even go there yet, I just want to share with you this story and realizations from it so that we perhaps begin this conversation within this field that I love so much. So this is my story of kind of Me Too within choral music. I went to my undergrad university, having attended homecomings there for several years prior to starting school there as a freshman. It was a family school. It was the school that my father's parents went to and met at and continued to be supporters of. It was the school that my parents met at. I think my dad was a senior. My mom had already graduated, but she was still working for the school. And when I was in high school, my dad was on the alumni board, and we would frequently go back for homecoming events. And music was a big part of the university. And the choral groups the main choral group would perform there, in addition to some of the other music groups that attended. And so I have distinct memories of watching the quote unquote like top auditioned choir perform at university events, even as a high school student. And when I decided to go to the school, I knew that I wanted to sing in this group. And so, like, I have distinct memories of watching this group perform it numerous times, and just knowing like I loved their, at that point, like, I loved their sound, and they were a group that I really looked up to, and knowing who the professor was that was in charge of the group. So I freshman year auditioned, made the group, I was a part of it. And my junior year in the group was one of several different student conductors. And going into my senior year, there's a lot of other things that kind of like coincided with this, but I decided to not sing with the group my senior year for a couple different reasons. One, I was going to be student teaching in the spring and really wanted to like dedicate my time to student teaching. And while you could student teach and be in the group, you would miss all of the rehearsals, and you had to learn the music on your own and all this kind of stuff. And so then these other things led into ultimately why I didn't do that with that in mind as well. I had friends in the group my junior year that I was like no longer friends with, and I just didn't feel a part of the ensemble. And like, we'd gone on an amazing European tour at the end of my junior year, but I still felt very disjunct from the group because friends that I'd previously had, I wasn't friends with, and it was kind of like heartbreaking to be literally all over Europe with people that you had loved and not be friends with them and like have pictures with them and memories with them because you weren't a part of that group. So there was that. And then there was also there was always like a head student director, and I disagreed with the director's choice on who was going to be the head student director my senior year. And I don't regret that, just like that at all. And like realizing that, and I still stand firm with like, I really don't agree with that decision. And it is what it is. But like, so there are a lot of different reasons, like, and factors why, and why I chose to not sing with the ensemble my senior year. But that being said, like, kind of left a rift between me and the director that I had loved so much. Not like not a big rift necessarily, but still there was this awkwardness. And he had been someone that I had admired since I was in high school, since I had known about the program. He was like a father figure to so many of us. And we would have retreats, and they would end up with like celebrations at his home. And it was a Christian university. So it wasn't, when I say like celebrations at home, I legitimately don't know like if alcohol is served at other university like choir functions where you are with your choir instructor. And I don't know if alcohol is brought into those things at all, but like alcohol was never a thing there. It was incredibly wholesome, if you will. Like incredibly wholesome, like an extension of a high school kind of choral music program. I also knew like, I can't really even think of very many people that, that typical like collegiate choir, like let's go out, drink sort of thing. It was not even like a thing in this choir. Again, very, very wholesome. I'm almost using air quotes, but like it legitimately was, at least that I knew of. So that is kind of like how that, an abbreviated version of my collegiate choral singing experience within that ensemble went. And graduated music education degree. I had met all of my requirements because I was involved in like 500 million different ensembles under the sun for credit prior to that. So it wasn't a problem, the fact that I didn't sing with them my senior year. But I just maybe wasn't as integrated with the ensemble as I could have been. I don't know. I just kind of let it go, and I went on and like just continued to live and be a music teacher, and graduated even though I didn't sing that last year. And I feel like there's even a small part of me that maybe sang with like the community ensemble that he conducted my first year of teaching. I don't know, but like still it wasn't bad, but it also wasn't as cool as it could have been, I guess, because I didn't sing my senior year. Anyhow, all of this to say, I went on, graduated, and I taught middle and high school choral music in the area for 3 years. And that third year, I was pursuing auditions for a master's degree in choral conducting. And if you are unfamiliar with that trajectory, you apply and you usually send in DVDs of yourself conducting. And if you're selected, you then go on campus and do a live audition. And this live audition can have several different components to it. And that year I was auditioning at 4 schools and was preparing everything from Britain's Rejoice in the Lamb to a Bach motet to Stravinsky's Symphony of Psalms and all that in between for these things. And I was like conducting high school, middle school music at this point, and was really trying to wrap my brain around preparing for these major works in front of these ensembles. So I was utilizing my network and had really great coaching sessions with my friend Shreyas, who's been on the podcast back at the beginning of last year, and then reached out to this professor as well because I wanted him to know what I was doing and still in the field. And, you always want your teachers to be proud of you. And even though I didn't sing with them my senior year, it wasn't like I was like upset at him necessarily. I'm someone that I can disagree with you and not like necessarily be mad at you, but it just was not something that I was like not ignoring him with. So anyways, all right. Yeah. And so we agreed to have a time where I would come and meet him in his office. And I was, like, hey, so-and-so, I am preparing these major works and I would love your insight into them so that I feel prepared for these auditions. And I remember this day so distinctly. His office was different than what he'd been in when I was in undergrad there. And it's like in this old building on campus and almost like picturesque, if you will. And we had the most like productive, insightful, just almost even like healing experience of talking about where I was going in choral music, what I loved in choral music. I know I was frank with him in saying, like, this is why I didn't sing my senior year. I know you probably know this, but it was nothing necessarily against you. It was just things I didn't agree with, and it didn't fit within my schedule. And there was a bunch of friend stuff that was going on, and I didn't feel uncomfortable in the ensemble anymore. And then in addition to, like, I distinctly remember us sitting at his grand piano in his office and, like, working through the Stravinsky Symphony of Psalms, which I conducted at my NAU interview, like in particular that, because that was one of his favorite pieces that I love talking about, and like make sure you're listening for this and be prepared for this, and just about the works in general. I like left that meeting so just so at peace with our relationship, and finally feeling like I like had this mentor back that I hadn't for the last 4 years. And, I said, I just hope, I didn't sing with the ensemble. Like, it wasn't necessarily you, it was all these other things. And it just felt incredibly cathartic. I was so grateful for that meeting because, again, remember, like, I had seen him when I was in high school conducting, and like, this was someone that I looked up to for many, many, many years. He's like a legend at this school for the work that he had done. And left his office on that afternoon, and will never forget, I met up with a friend of mine, and like I don't even remember where it was in Nashville. It was somewhere I had never gone before. But I met with my friend Lindsay, and we were sitting at the bar having a drink, and I get a text message, and I look down, and it's from him. And not weird, like, right, like, to text, but I opened the text message, and it said something to the effect, like, blah, 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 blah. I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I hope you know I wanted to kiss you the whole time we were working today or meeting today or something like that. And I don't think I will ever forget that moment and that instant, because quite frankly, at that moment, the man that I thought that I knew died to me. Like, the person that I thought he was died to me. So here's the thing, right? Like, I'm 24 probably at this point. 24, yeah. And a grown woman. I'm not underage by any means. But this is someone that I viewed as a mentor, as a father figure to me. Someone that has 3 children, all older than me. Someone that has been a professor, a teacher, not just as a conductor, but in oral skills and choral literature, all these other things. And texts me that he wanted to kiss me the whole time we were meeting. On top of the fact that it was like, in my mind, had been this therapeutic, like, come to Jesus, like renewal thing of what I thought was like a mentorship. How I viewed him was a mentor. And yet not only did he think during our meeting that he wanted to kiss me the whole time, he felt so inclined to text me that after the fact. I was heartbroken. Because like I just said, like, at that moment, this man that I thought so much of died to me. So clearly, like, did he put his hands on me? No. Did he physically assault me? No. Was I underage? No. But in my mind, and I firmly believe, like, in reality, he crossed a line. And I don't even care if you think it, like, the fact that you actually texted a former student who my kids, I like look at all of my I don't even like to use the word former, right? Because, like, I look at all of my students, all of my kids, I call them, and, like, they're still my kids. Like, I can't even fathom in a million years, even, like, if you were to even take someone that I taught my first year of teaching when I was 22, and they could have been 18, and, like, that 4-year difference, like, I just can't even fathom. I can't even wrap my brain around even letting myself even think that, much less go there. So for this to happen, for this man that also had kids, like, literally older than me, to say this on so many different levels. It was devastating, and for a long time I didn't know what to do about it and what to say, um, and ultimately, again, I'm underage, or I'm not underage. I am like over age. I'm 24 at this point. I'm not under 18. In addition to the fact I'm no longer a student at the university and haven't been for almost 3 years, I was kind of stuck in limbo as to whether or not to say something or not. But my biggest fear was, even though I was not underage and even though I was no longer a student, who was I to think that if he had the audacity to say that to me, even 3 years out of the school, like what sort of thing would he potentially say to a current student? Like, I genuinely don't know. I mean, I was not very far removed from that program. Who is to say that he did not say something to a current student? I don't know. And so that prompted me to say something. And we had a very close family friend that was working at the university. I had like screenshot, actually, I mean, this was so long ago. I don't know if you could like screenshot something, but I had photographic evidence of the fact that the text message had occurred. And and so I like passed that along to her, who was working in an office at the university, and I was told that it was passed along too. But I don't think there was like such a level of shame on my part as well, because he had said that to me. I knew for once, like I was fortunate enough to like be in a place that I didn't allow myself to even think that I had like quote unquote led him on or anything like that. Like I felt very, yeah, that's a very natural tendency. I can only imagine what it's like for some women to think that, well, what if I led him on? What if I made him think that? Like, that would have been so natural, of me to think that. I'm quite honestly grateful that I didn't allow myself to go there. I passed it on to the university. Nothing was ever done. In fact, the new music building that is on campus is like and he's since retired, but it's in his name. Like, it's called like his name, Choral Hall. So I don't know. I don't know if and I don't know if I mean, I did what I felt like was the right thing in the right time of saying something, and the fact the university knew and they didn't do anything. I don't know but realistically, what could they have done, right? Because I was no longer a student and I was over 18. But I also wanted there to be a record that someone had reported this, because if a student or if someone under the age of 18 had come forward and said anything about him, I wanted there to be a track record that at least someone had said something. And to be quite honest, we know that if anywhere if there's going to be a cover up, it's going to be at a Christian university, which this is. And so like that wouldn't also surprise me if other people have said something or come forward and nothing has been said. I am not unique. I am not like, I'm special. I am like, I say this not to like diminish my self-worth and who I am, but in this type of like scenario with this type of person, like, I know that I'm not special. I know that I'm not unique. I know that we didn't have this like unique special bond necessarily that made him want to say anything to me versus like the hundreds of other female students that he's had through the years. Would not surprise me at all if that has been done. But yeah, that is like my that is my story, and that is like my Me Too instance. And I can't believe it happened to me. When I went to graduate school, I was still reeling from it on a level, and I will never forget having conversations, and I'm keeping this as vague as possible, but like just with people, the more I've shared this with like close friends in the choral music industry, or even just listened within choir, to know that this is not an exception, right? To hear like, oh, well, this man has sold many choral music octavos and is an incredibly well-known conductor and composer, particularly on the collegiate circuit. And have you heard about the relationships he has with his students, or this, that, and the other? And please hear me, I do not have facts on any of this. I've heard from people that they've had stories of that they have been, like, I'll never forget the story of one person telling me like a professor had like essentially, and this was many, many years ago, like 30 years ago, like, of a professor like having a female in a car and not letting her out because he wanted to like talk with her, and it just not being appropriate. And again, I'm saying all of this very vaguely, not to like avoid calling things out for what they are, but also not wanting to share anyone else's like direct story without their permission or without them being ready to, or anything like that. The point of me talking about this is I quite frankly never expected to record a podcast episode about this at all, but it is something that like randomly has just surfaced to the top of my heart and mind the last like week, maybe even 10 days. That was like, Beth, you have to talk about this, and like someone needs to hear this story. So for whatever reason, here it is. I was astounded when I like talked about it in graduate school, that to hear like I wasn't alone. And quite frankly, since graduate school, of the jobs that I've held, 2 of the positions I have held came open because of men that did inappropriate actions when they were in the positions that then I ended up taking over. Now, this is not a male bashing episode, because there's plenty of stories and instances where women have inappropriately sought relationships with male students, and I'm sure female students as well. I don't know at all. I'm just speaking from my experience, but a church position I held, the man was arrested for child pornography and things related to that. And then the last school position that I held, the man was charged, not convicted, with a suspected relationship of a student at his previous school. And this kind of stuff happens, right? Like, and I think it's sometimes when you get on the teacher side of things, like these become your colleagues that are making these decisions, and that's one thing. But then also we have to realize that we have friends that have also been recipients of unwarranted advances, to say the least, of people within choirs that we have like called safe havens, and we have called families, and we have called communities, and like conductors, we esteem them on such a high level that there is also this side as well. So there's not like a happy ending to this episode. I don't even really know how to end it, except for the fact I have felt such a need to tell this story. I have tried to not tell it in my mind and not record it because it's not something fun or comfortable to necessarily talk about. But for some reason, I feel like there is someone out there, whether it is a choir singer or maybe a choir conductor even, that is like struggling, having feelings towards a student. I mean, I don't know. I can't even conceptualize what that would be like. But this is rampant, quite frankly, in our industry. And it's something we have to talk about, as much as I don't like to, and as much as I really wish that I could like bury my head in the sand and pretend that I was an exception to the experience. But I'm not. And I know that like I'm very fortunate in the fact that it was just a text message, that it was not a physical contact, that it was not even like a verbal face-to-face contact, that it was not with him when I was currently a student. Like, I don't know what or how I would have responded in that instance if he had said that just 3 years prior when I had been a student. I do not know how I would have responded if this man that I have thought is like a musical father figure for years, even before I got to the university as an undergraduate student, like I do not know how I would have responded in person had he made an in-person advance to me. Not that I'm saying I would have like been for like I would have been so I was so shocked receiving a text message. I can't even imagine what my response would have been in person. But I will tell you this. I don't have the answer. It's wrong. It should not happen. It is inappropriate. I think that any teacher, any professor that pursues a student, whether it's a current or former student in any light, like, yes, there are exceptions perhaps to rules. We have like a family friend that is now married to someone that I think was their teacher like 30 years ago, in that sort of sense. And there's all like bizarre circumstances to that story. But like generally speaking, and particularly when it is not warranted, like this is not right. And I want to encourage anyone, female or male, that has experienced this to say something, because you are not alone. You are not the only one that this has happened to. My story is but a small like pinprick in the unfortunate amount of stories that I know. Like, this is a part of our industry, and I, for one moment, have never regretted not saying anything to this friend that worked at the university and that brought it to their attention. And ultimately, like, it's up to the university once they know to make the decision that they have done. And you must realize that people, in my personal opinion and in the research that I've done, right, people that do this sort of thing, that utilize like some sort of authority to invoke the realization or feeling or desire that they can say this to anyone, or like say this especially to a student, it's not the first time. It's not the first time. And nothing is to say that while you might have been of age and not a student like I was, who's to say that they didn't cross the line with someone who was a student or who was underage? And this professor knew that it was wrong. I mean, I just don't even know how you would know that it's like not wrong as well, in the fact of like how I responded after. And well, I didn't just respond like directly to him, but like just knows what they said was inappropriate, clearly. I don't know. Also, no, you could not think that, but that's besides the point. So I just want to encourage someone that I genuinely feel like this episode is for you. If you're listening to this and going like, I need to say something, I encourage you to pursue the means in which you feel most comfortable of sharing your story. And, with mine, like nothing happened, at least that I saw or knew about. And I ultimately can't control that, right? Like if something happens or if something doesn't happen. But I also know that in sharing my story, I was providing evidence for anyone that had come before or after that this was also something, this is potentially a pattern that needs to be known. And like in the case of the Weinstein case or really anything other, it's unfortunate, right? And like in today's day and age, we have so many rights and are so much empowerment as females, but like we still don't have the same, I mean, it's just not there yet, right? And we see this in so many other things as well, but it's just, we know. Yeah. So I'm going to close and just encouraging someone that is maybe experiencing this to know you are not alone. Encouraging someone that has experienced this to say something. And then also to the greater choral community to keep your eyes open, keep your ears open. Remember that this does happen. And for me, it happened to me as a female. But gender also doesn't have to play a factor into it. It is common with females in this instance because of years of history. So watch out for your sisters. Keep them in mind. Keep a careful eye on them. Support them through this because we are powerful on our own. We are capable of so much on our own, women. But we are even more powerful and even more capable and even stronger when we link arms with our sisters and brothers around us, and remembering that like you might be me too, but you are also not alone, and we are here to support each other and to support you. So please reach out, even if it is to me or to a trusted friend, and know that it is not okay. Know that it is not choral music, and know. Actually, I don't know what to tell you to know because I don't know what stage you're in, but know that you're not alone.